Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where it's about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode, episode 4 of Motherland, Fort Salem. I should have specifically said season 1, episode 4, but at the time of recording, it's obviously only season 1's out yet, because season 2 hasn't come out, because it comes out later this month. Regardless, tangents and all that aside, a lot of interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, obviously, we're immediately picking up after last episode, the events of last episode. I thought, okay, so I think it was interesting, like, my worries about, like, oh, man, I hope this doesn't get spun and turned into, like, oh, Raelle might be responsible for Porter. It's like, nah, she's actually celebrated for what she did. Everyone's like, because even Acosta's like, you could have hurt yourself doing what you did, but, I mean, even died, but it's like, we're proud of you. And obviously, the aftermath of it, it's like, obviously, it's like, she doesn't think she did much, because it's like, I tried, but it doesn't matter if I tried. I couldn't save him. And for her, it's not just, she's like, I've got these visions, these memories that aren't mine. And it's like, well, now, Faye, she's like, it's not just that. I'm literally feeling what he's feeling. I'm wondering, is it a special circumstance because she tried to use her abilities on someone who was dying? Maybe that changed it, like someone who's on the cusp, on scene, passing over to the light, maybe in some shape or form that like has an effect on that ability, or maybe that's just showing you just how special Raelle is. That the fact is that her doing that she was able to not just absorb the pain, but maybe because she was so desperate to save him, she ended up absorbing more than just the pain and the injury. She ended up absorbing his feelings and his memories. But obviously that starts kind of plaguing her throughout the episode, because it's like, right, like it's too much, because for her, it's like she's trying to make sense of everything, especially when she goes to see Salem. Salem starts bringing up something like, no, don't worry about it. He was disturbed, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, the fact is, it's like, oh, you say all this, but you didn't bring up any of these details the first time. It's like, it's just a little, I would have been like, that's a little suspicious. You weren't talking all this mad crap about your ex until now after he's dead, which is kind of messed up, because Raelle's feeling guilty, because she's like, maybe he killed himself because of us, like finding out that we were a couple and everything. That was kind of a hard pill to swallow. But she's also thinking about all the weird stuff that he had said about Scylla. And so, but to be fair, it's like that you notice that like every time something comes up that makes you question Scylla, she just happens to have a perfect response and everything. Maybe eventually Raelle will pick up on it, but she's so into her. She's never felt like this towards anyone that is blinding her. Love can blind you to a lot of person's flaws and who they really are, because it's a situation where you see what you want to see, and they also make sure that you only see what you want to see, or at least what they want you to see, you know? What I thought was a pretty dope moment is like, obviously, like, they're kind of gathering, talking about, like, obviously they're going to, like, flags are going to be at half-mast for Porter. But then a unit was nearby talking about, yeah, like, Raelle, she almost died. It's like, oh, she went off cannon. And then you had Abigail be like, yo, she didn't go off cannon. Shut your damn mouths. Don't mention her name. Like, don't bring her name out of your filthy mouths or something like that. And then she's walking away like, Tally kind of smiles and she's like, what? She's like, nothing. It's like, because she has the same reaction. Everyone's like, yo, look at you. Abigail sticking up for Raelle. Would have never thought you'd see the day. But even she's proud of her, you know? Because even later on, because obviously she doesn't want to go to the dance, the Beltane dance, the whole, it's called the Reel. Like, she doesn't want to go to it, but Tabby needs it, because it's like, we kind of have to go as a unit, because this whole thing will make her stronger. And she's like, for Tally's and, for Abigail's sake, but mainly for Tally's, she'll go, even though she's super reluctant to go. What's interesting, too, is, because we had a conversation between Abigail's mom, Sarah, and Acosta, where it's kind of like, okay, so there's a conversation about whether or not this Porter situation was spree related. It's like, yeah, what caller said needs to be, Raelle, it's like what she said needs to be considered, but you're making leaps and bounds there about it. So Abigail's mom is, suggesting like maybe we kind of look into this. It's just interesting that it's a suicide. Even saying like we like cut Beltane, and Sarah was like no, because it's such an honor tradition that she's saying like even the spree being who they are, there's no way they'd like mess with like a witch holiday. This is such a sacred holiday. They wouldn't like spit on it. So for her, it's like we'll keep things going. But also Abigail's mom figured out like basically there's residue left in mirrors when they do their communications. So it's like, right, we're going to use this as an opportunity to check everyone's mirrors while they're away, enjoying Beltane and everything. So obviously later on in the episode, Abigail's mom goes into the room that Scylla uses, and I'd say that specifically. I'll get to that in a second. But obviously she doesn't wait long enough, because as she walks away, then the balloon pops up. I'm assuming it's because they made sure to cover it, any I guess they keep it active, so it's like, all right, we're going to make it so that none of the residue shows. Or maybe it was just like a delayed reaction because they reduced the amount of residue left over. Or maybe it was just that showcasing, like, no, we're good at covering our tracks, because other elements of the episode show that. We'll get to that soon enough. But the reason why I was saying, like, the room Scylla uses, because when Raelle was, like, banging on Scylla's door, she had one of Porter's memories, and he was down like a door. I was like, is that actually not her room that she meets Raelle in? Is that someone else's room? And is the room that she's in, Porter's room, is actually her room? Like, I don't know whether it's a thing of, like, that room's just vacant and she uses it like that, or she just waits to her, like, roommates out. Because I think she uses one of those rooms, probably, like, the room that Porter met her. Well, because it seemed like she was caught off guard by Porter being there. So, like I said, I don't know which one's kind of her real room. I think the one that Porter went to visit her in is her actual real room. And I think the one Raelle visited her in, isn't her room. I don't know. There's some shenanigans going on with that. Like, that, because that's what I'm saying. Like, Porter was like, it seemed like he was maybe one or two doors down from where Raelle was, at least, like, but it could have just been like the positioning because of the memory and stuff like that. But it seemed like she was looking down the hallway a little bit, like, to like I said, the next door or two. So I'm like, there's definitely something fishy with that. Because I'm assuming she wouldn't use the mirror in her own room, because that way it's like, well, I'll go and use someone else's room if I never need to communicate with, like, the spree or whatever, because that way suspicion will fall on someone else and not me. Like, it won't be traced back to me. So that's why I'm sure she's not worried about that. I don't know. That was my current thought about it. So obviously there was also that meeting between Abigail's mom and her unit. Obviously it's like, Tally's like, oh my God, it's such an honor to meet you. And then obviously Raelle's kind of got a reaction like, you might have known my mom, Willa, and bounces. It's like, oh, what's her issue? It's like, yeah, she thinks you're responsible for her mom's death. She's like, she wouldn't be the only one. But then we also see, like, her mom is kind of a, like, because she holds her door, like, she wants her daughter to, like, it's like you're a bellwether, so you're supposed to stand above everyone else. You're supposed to kind of, like, be the pinnacle and, like, be the example to kind of look up to and live up to. And so for her, it's like, oh, your rankings aren't what they're supposed to be. It's like, yeah, but there's other factors. It's like, we're getting there. It's like, no, getting there isn't good enough. Almost on the battlefield isn't good enough, because almost could get you killed, which is like, it's coming from a place of concern, but also it doesn't come off that way. It doesn't come off like motherly love. It just comes off tough. It just comes off tough without the motherly love aspect to it. It's like, she has moments where it's like, she's touching her daughter almost like, well, as long as you got the message, honey. It's almost that look, and it's like, all right, also invite your unit to your cousin's wedding. It's like, but they might embarrass. It's like, the fact of the matter is you get them in line, which is sad, because later on she's like, yeah, you guys are going to be my plus twos. It's like, yeah, you're making it seem like it's your idea, but you're only inviting them because your mom is suggesting it. Which is kind of sad. And like, the fact is they're only coming along because it's like, and the fact is you still have, like, even though you're kind of tight with them, it's like, oh, they might embarrass me, because like, they're so, like, as they say, like, as Raelle constantly throws out there, like, high Atlantic, it's like, you're so, like, high class and stuff like that, you look down upon it. So this is your unit. You're supposed to be a team, supposed to have each other's back, but you still look down upon Raelle and Tally, because for her, it's like, her mom's like, you are supposed to be the leader of this team, because you're supposed to, she wants her to go there because it'll be, people from recruiters or whatever from War College there, so, to see if you're leadership material, because you are, that's what you were striving for, right? You are the leader. And she's like, yeah, even though technically, I think we are going to pivot more so to Raelle being the leader of it, and I think that's going to be an ego blow for, Abigail, because, like, it's a bellwether, she's supposed to be running, and I'm sure that's going to be a whole issue later on. As the show progresses, but it's just kind of sad. Like, you can definitely see elements of, like, right, their relationship isn't the best, because her mom's just very, like, especially because it seemed like maybe she's the only one of her, like, she doesn't have any siblings, so she might be the last, like, it's like she might be the only daughter, so all the pressure's on her, and it's like, you got to be perfect, you got to be amazing, you got to be the top of the class. It's like, that's a lot of pressure that, like, you can understand why Abigail's got that high and mighty aspect to her, because she's kind of like had like, you know, under the assumption her farts smell like cinnamon and rainbows or something like that. But also it's just because I'm sure it's her way of masking like yeah, right, like she has to be confident like that because she needs to be. I mean, I'm sure that only adds more fire to the whole her and Liba situation. Once again, because I keep mispronouncing every time. I want to say it is Liba, I believe, but obviously like she was talking mad trash to Abigail, but obviously like that competitive nature kind of continues. So I think it is a thing of like it's a necessary thing that yeah, they trash talk each other, but it is a situation where I think they do strive to make each other better. So inadvertently, it is a good frenemy situation that they have going on. It's more so rivals, but I think it benefits them whether they'd realize it or not. I think if they actually join forces, they'd be a lot tougher than like they'd be a force to be reckoned with type of thing if need be. But obviously, I don't know if units like collab like that. Your unit is your unit. You don't really like. I don't think you really tend to trail off from your unit in that regard. So obviously, another interesting aspect of this episode is they're planning on basically the Necros are going to bring Porter back for a little bit at the peak of like the real where like all the energy's gathered and stuff like that of Beltane so that they can talk to him and find out what happened. Obviously, Scylla starts getting nervous, super nervous, especially when Rael, based on what she's hearing from other people, like Porter's friend being like, yeah, he didn't even seem like he was sad. I guess you don't really know people like you think you do. And she goes off and it's like, Scylla, like, I have a vision, like, you met with him. It's like, yes, so what if I did? It's like, the fact is you didn't bring that up. It's like, it's kind of suspicious, but it's like, wait, do you think I did something to him, force him to? It's like, no, but it's just like, don't even go down that route. I got something really important to, yeah, because she's like, I got something important to do. I gotta go, you know, obviously she doesn't say this, but obviously it's, you know, it's like implied of like, yeah, I got something really important to do, and that's for me to go cover up the crime I committed, you know? So she's trying to get in there to do something to his body, but she can't. So from the outside, she raises the temperature. I'm assuming that helped make it so that, well, no, because I was about to say, I wonder, did it help shorten the period? But it's like, no, it was only supposed to be at like the height of like Beltane and everything, of the real and it, well, because the real is just a dance, but Beltane is the whole ordeal. Like at the spike of it with all the energies, that's when it kind of but they only had like a small window. I thought raising the temperature would have done it then, but like it was only for a moment because like they immediately came in afterwards. So it's like the body didn't have long enough to sit there to heat it because they needed to keep it like as preserved as possible. But then when Porter was like, yes, I killed myself, it started being like, oh, the last person I saw was the witchfinder, and you're like, and it seemed like she was surprised. So I was like, oh, she had nothing to do with it. And it's like, oh yeah, we do see later on, because she sees Rael in her room and was like, that's not Rael, the way she's reacting and stuff like that. And then she gets on top of her, starts and I was like, yeah. So it's like someone else from the spree and disguises Rael being like, we told you to bring her to our side, not yours. We already had to clean up your mess. Make sure you get some way to get yourself invited to that Bellwater wedding in some shape or form. Get it done and no more mistakes. The fact is that she was able to kind of walk on campus like that. Like because I was about to say, at first I was like, is that supposed to be someone we know? I don't think it is. But I was like, yeah. The fact is, once again, that it also takes away what I was wondering whether or not everyone else can do. It's like, yeah, it's probably a special ability that, like, a very special dark magic the spree can do. It also answers the question of, like, the person doesn't have to be dead for you to use it, because obviously Rael's, like, perfectly fine. I wonder, like, how do you do that? Like, do you just need a focus, like, on that person's memories and stuff like that? So, like I said, it kind of, like I brought up last episode, reminds me of, like, Lovecraft Country in that regard. But I'm wondering, in some shape or form, is that, could that be, like, I wonder, do you, like, need a sample of their hair or something? Or just, like I said, just visually need to know what they look like in some shape or form to, well, take on their form. Whatever the case may be, so... But it also brings up something else interesting, because the spree aren't supposed to have a leader. So, but I guess, like, that's the leader of her cell or something. So maybe they have leaders in that regard. So I don't know. I just thought that was interesting that she has someone that she kind of, well, obviously it's kind of showcased that she has someone she receives orders from. But I just thought that was fascinating. But other than that, the whole Beltane situation was kind of interesting. Well, in particular the real, because obviously you had like Tally kind of being worried, because obviously she got the message from Garrett, and it's kind of like, oh, I got the picture and everything, and trying to decide what dress to wear. Which I even love that line for Rio, being like, yeah, if like our unit survival depends on on Tally getting laid, she's going to need a different dress, and like Abigail's agreed. So I thought that was kind of a nice bonding moment between them. But obviously it's like Tally's worried about like, right, like the Rio is supposed to kind of reveal like truths, whether it's truths that you're not really able to see, or who you're like. It's like everything's kind of going to work out the way it's meant to be. If something doesn't happen, it wasn't meant to be. But just kind of trust in the Rio and everything, which ultimately works out for Tally, because she ends up with Garrett anyway. So, but I love that like Rio buddies up with Porter's buddy, and it's like, oh yeah, like she's like, did I not give off the vibe that like I wasn't into guys? And he was like, yeah, didn't I give off the vibe I'm not into girls? It's like, all right, fair game. And so they kind of like, they hit it off and everything. I thought that was pretty dope. Especially when they were laying, like everyone else is having sex and everything. And it's like someone in particular is moaning super loud. It's like, we get it. You're having sex. God. And obviously it's like, yeah, I hope Tally's getting everything she wants. And then like, her new buddy's like, oh yeah, let me break it down to you. That basically what he did follows like a specific like witch romance sex thing that we do. And it's like, yeah, even that picture he said, not his, that picture of his junk, it's like a very generic drawing of it. And I was like, oh, I love the dishing. But obviously for Raelle, she was bringing up the question of, had he ever been in love? And it's like, what if like you were in love, like what if you care about someone deeply, they're really important to you, but they've done something unforgivable? Like how do you like come to terms with that? And it's like, you just have to figure out whether that person's worth it, and if they are, fight for them. And I think Raelle kind of makes a decision, sadly, to double down when it comes to Scylla. It probably won't be till late season when she finds out the truth. Maybe not to the end of the season, but I want her to. It's just like, because the longer it goes on, the more heartbreaking it's going to be when it's revealed. Because it's meant to tug you along to the point you're like, oh, come on, Rio, find out the truth. Like, dump this person that's using and manipulating you and trying to take you down the wrong path. It's like, but it's like, no, because it needs to. The reveal has to happen at like a very impactful moment. I was almost surprised when it's like, oh, we're tiptoeing towards this already, but it's like, of course, we're just going to be tiptoeing. Like the real reveal isn't going to be till like I said, later in the season, or like near the end, or at the end of the season. It's going to happen at a very pivotal point, I'm sure, when it just has the most emotional impact. At this point it'll have emotional impact, but not to the extent, especially because now she's been like, oh yeah, I care about you, and I'm sorry I didn't tell you everything, but Porter was trying to get back with me, and I was like, no. And so it's like, I'm not very good at opening up, I'm a dodger, like, so like, things never work out for us. It's like, basically like everything around us fade away, we fade away, or we go away type of thing. So for her, it's like, because of all of that, I'm not really good at opening up and trusting people. But obviously it's like, Rayo's like, let's give this a try. Like, whoever you were, whoever you are, like, I'm in it all the way. And you're just like, the fact, once again, she's doubling down just makes you go, ooh, Scylla, you suck because you're doing this to her. So I felt so bad for Clive and what's the dude's name? Like I say, I think it's like Augustine. Like, I felt bad for them because it's like, oh, Abigail didn't show up for them. Obviously, Raelle showed up for her buddy, and Garrett and Tally had their moment. Everyone else did, but it's just kind of sad. Like, those guys are like, oh, where's Abigail? And she's off training. Because like for her, like her and Leba, it's like, yeah, we both got what we want. Let's get straight to training and stuff like that. Like, I'm not trying to get all sentimental. I just needed, which that was a whole thing. I was like, wow. Like, I'm assuming, because Leba was dancing with two dudes as well. I was like, I'm sure she was getting it in just like Abigail. Abigail was like, enough. You two. And it's just kind of like, all right. And they start, it's like, no, now back to me. It's like, yo, that's a lot of switching and swerving in that section. I'm like, all right, do your thing. That was interesting. I left it out too, but I love that like Porter's buddy and Raelle like had to pretend like, oh my God, like they're shaking stuff and pretending like they're having sex. I love it. There was also an interesting conversation between the witch father and Sarah, because for her, it's like, he was like, yeah, it's a good thing. You were right that it was a good thing that we did do this. She's like, yes. Like, the fact is, Beltane is like, it's a very important thing. And like, see no attacks. And he says, for now, because it's kind of suggesting like the Spree are not going to like stay like this forever. Eventually, like, no matter how sacred a witch situation is, if they want to do an attack, they're going to do an attack. So next time we might not be so lucky where everything kind of worked out that there was no attack. To be fair, they were too busy. Well, who can say about the other cells, but maybe in this particular cell, it's like they have too many other plans going at one time, so they're like, yeah, we can give the world a break. Like, they probably hold those particular witch traditions so sacred themselves. They don't like the militarization of witches, but they still respect the traditions, the old ways of the witches, and I think that's kind of what that was represented. Plus, this particular cell was kind of busy cleaning up another mess, so they probably didn't have time for an attack, even though they wanted to, because they had spent so much time to, like, help Scylla keep her cover and not be revealed to be, well, the traitor that she is. Well, the secret agent that she is. Or, like I said, maybe they just didn't have any plans at all. I don't know. So that's something to kind of think about. But I think that's something Sarah's got to think about. Like, right, like, the Spree won't, like, that, he's right, that Spree won't keep this up forever, that there will be, you know. And it's also interesting, too, what are they called? They're not scourges, scourge. I forgot the whip things that they use, and it's like she ends up getting porters. It's like, you know, because the Witchfather was like, yeah, Witchfinder's really different thing. The Witchfather was like, yeah, like I can't think of something more, because like Porter's buddy had already given her one, but this is that. So obviously she showcases at the very end. It's like, oh, do you know how to use it? And she immediately gets out. She's like, all right, I guess she does. So everybody's supercharged because of, like, you know, the holiday and everything. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see ultimately where all of this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, low light to the force, and enjoy it. Good day and good